Good morning, everyone. My name is Joan Ryan. I'm the President of Sutherland Shire Business Chamber. I'd like to welcome you all here this morning. I'd also like to acknowledge Steve Simpson, the Deputy Mayor of Sutherland Shire, and Brian Coney, CEO of Clonmeno. Thank you for coming on this morning. Planning for business is so important, and knowing what's coming down the track really makes a difference for strategy, business setting up strategies, and that's why it's so great to have Peter Barber along with us this morning. Peter joined Council in 2005 and was appointed Director of Planning and Environment in 2003. His responsibilities include land use, planning and policy, environmental policy and advice, development and subdivision assessment, public health issues and inspections, environmental and building compliance, pool safety, tree management and fire safety. Today, Peter's going to speak to us about what's coming for the Sutherland Shire. I have seen this presentation before, and it's very interesting. It's also interesting in terms of the state government's impact on planning in our local area. So I'll now hand over to Peter. Thank you.
Thank you for the welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invitation from the Chamber. What we're going to do this morning is step you through the planning system from top to bottom in terms of how we come down to the fine detail at the local level, which is probably what most interested in. And yes, Joe's right, the state does have a fair bit to do with how the plans roll out. This presentation I gave a couple of months ago, so some of the numbers in it are a couple of months out of date, but they're still pretty current. So in terms of planning for Greater Sydney, the reality is that the state government does have a lot of influence, particularly at the high level. So they really do set the agenda for the first few levels down in terms of planning, and councils really come in at the greater level of detail when you start to become more local. So I'm going to step through that framework for you now. So you might have heard of the Greater Sydney Commission, the GSC. That's a fairly new creation of the state government, established a few years ago. They were really charged with bringing planning and infrastructure together in New South Wales and Sydney in particular. Something which has been lacking really in planning in New South Wales. They've been fairly successful. They're an agency that sits, they're now attached to the Department of Premier and Cabinet, so they're apart from any of the actual agencies in the government, sort of senior side of the Premier, which gives a bit of an indication of the level of importance that they have to the government. The things that they've been good at doing is coordinating. So what we struggled with in the past is getting all the agencies together, getting the RMS and Sydney Water and others together to actually tell us what they've got in mind, so that we can work in with them and we can all work together and try and get things to coordinate. So you would have seen over Sydney in the last few decades, housing built in a certain location with no infrastructure and vice versa. So one thing the GSC's done really well is they've been given the authority to bring all of those groups together. And when they call meetings for certain things to plan areas or whatever it might be, those agencies will come because they're kind of instructed to. And they've been much more forthcoming in letting us know, everyone else know what they're up to, which is a great start. The second thing that I think they've been really successful in is just creating that nexus between infrastructure and growth. So in the past there's been promises of infrastructure, and the governments in some strategies have said, go ahead, council, rezone land, build housing, the infrastructure will come, and often it never does. So the Greater Sydney Commission has really founded their planning on where there'll be infrastructure, there'll be growth in housing and jobs. And so that's been a really important thing to establish. And that's really the first time I think that's been successfully done. Sounds pretty logical and simple, but it's never really rolled out the way it should. So the highest level plan in the hierarchy is this one. So this is the metropolitan strategy. I'm across for 3 cities. As you can see in the graphic there, the general sort of theory of the whole thing is three centres. So you've got the harbour, traditional CBD. You've got Parramatta, which is emerging as a CBD on its own. And then this concept of the western city, which is kind of based on the airport, the new airport, connecting up Penrith and Campbelltown and sort of creating an arc through that area there. So that's at the broadest level, that's the concept in that plan. So this one is a 40-year vision, so it goes out a fair way with a 20-year plan. That's kind of the framework that this one sets up for Metro Sydney. So as I said, infrastructure is an important part of it, and this is the infrastructure plan that's in the Metro strategy, and it shows you all the main big infrastructure that are planned over the next 20 years and then in the 40-year vision into the future. You can see the new airport on the left there and new proposed roads and rail lines and things that go along with that. What do you see in the Shire? We're down here. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So when you're looking at that nexus between infrastructure and growth in housing and jobs, the short answer is we're not getting anything in the way of infrastructure. So the expectations on us in terms of that growth are fairly low as well. I'll come back to that. So Sydney will grow by 1.7 million people in the next 20 years, and the people will go where the infrastructure is going. So the new metro lines now open up in the northwest, and there's other freeways and things that you all know about that have been planned and built. And so the infrastructure, the people will go where the infrastructure goes. That's the plan. Okay. So next level down, under the metro plan, there's been 5 districts established in Sydney. And so we're in the South District, and we share that with Georges River Council and Canterbury Bankstown Council. So the 3 of us make up the South District. And the Greater Sydney Commission, in consultation with councils in the community, has put in place the South District Plan, so it fits under the Metro strategy. And that plan essentially deals with the future under 4 themes. So one is livability, which is about quality of life for people essentially, access to open space, quality of housing, those sorts of things. Productivity, which is about jobs and economic growth and development. Sustainability, and infrastructure and collaboration. So they're the 4 themes that the plan is kind of built around. Within those 4 themes, the plan then goes into what I call planning priorities. So they're kind of next level down detail in terms of strategy. And they're the things that council must address. So we kind of come in underneath the district plan with our local planning work. And the plan sets out a number of, under those 4 themes, a whole bunch of priorities which we must address when we're doing our local planning. When I come to talk about jobs, you'll see I'll actually go through the 4 priorities that come to us from the South District Plan, so you can sort of see how that all unrolls. So this plan here shows the South District, and it shows some of the key features and infrastructure as well. It does show the grey dotted line there with the arrow on the end. That's the F6 extension. It's in there as a visionary mass transit link. So that's probably sort of one of the 30-40 year time horizon, so it's not really seriously planned for in this document. The other thing that's in there, there's this sort of blue dotted line that connects up to Cogra. That's also a visionary mass transit link that might be a metro line or an underground rail line or something like that. That's also visionary, so there's no details as to where that might go, where the stations might be and that sort of thing. So it's in there as future infrastructure, but it's not really on the horizon in terms of this cycle of planning. So they're the only 2 things really to the new infrastructure that are there. So here's the whole system in one confusing diagram. What I'm planning to do is to take you through some of the bits in the middle and then come back to this and hopefully all the pieces will start to fit together. So top of the tree, the Greater Sydney Metro Plan, the themes there, 40-year vision, 20-year plan, then down to the district plan, so South District Plan for us, with the same things in it, with the priorities and actions in it, then down to the local level, which is what I'm going to move on to next. This is the space where council basically plays in terms of its planning. Over this time, so we have the community strategic plan, which is something that all councils have had for some time. That's a more broad plan rather than just planning as in town planning. That's kind of all aspects of the community. And then it's designed, the intention is that it feeds into this as well. So you kind of got state stuff moving down this way and then local stuff coming in this way, and it all kind of comes together at the local level. through these plans here. Okay. So in terms of Sutherland Shire, zooming in a little bit, you all know the Shire well. The Shire has a few attributes to it that make it a bit different and a bit interesting. There's some of them, there's plenty more. We've got a few things that nobody else has, like a nuclear reactor, a desalination plant. We've got a fair amount of industrial land and some potential left out at Kurnell in particular and Tarrant Point, where Toyota currently stands. Importantly, this is census data. 91% of residents rate the quality of life as very good or excellent. So that's no secret to most of you who probably live and work in the Shire. But you know, it's a great place to live and it has a lot of great attributes to it, which we can try and make the most of. So population and housing. This gives you a snapshot through time in terms of how the population has changed. The growth is fairly modest, and housing sort of moves along at the same kind of pace. Our growth is about 0.6 of 1% per year. So you're talking about 1,300 people-ish every year coming into the Shire. Most of that is really natural growth, so people having families and that sort of thing. There's not a huge amount of migration in from other areas, and also very few people leave. That's shown out in the census as well. Our migration is, I think, the lowest in Sydney. So once people discover the Shire, they usually stay. That's the bottom line. So to accommodate that 1,300 or so people per year, we need about 600 dwellings. That's roughly how the numbers work out. And that's really what's happened historically, pretty much. Household size in the Shire is shrinking a little, so more single-person households, more split families, more older people living on their own. So we actually need more housing to accommodate the same population. Because where you might have had a family living in one home as a family, now there might be two families, so they need two dwellings for the same number of people. So there's a trend in that as well. The biggest change in our population going forward is really the growth in the older age groups. This is a phenomenon that's happening Sydney-wide really, but particularly in the Shire, we're expecting a very high growth rate in the 60 plus and particularly the 70 plus age groups. In fact, in the 70 plus, it's up. By 2036, we're expecting that age group to grow by 69%. So that has an impact really in the types of housing that we need, the type of jobs that might be required in the Shire to support people in those age groups as well. Other than that, most of our other age groups, there's some ups and there's some downs in it, but the standout is growth in the older age groups in the Shire, which is important from a business planning point of view. So where are the jobs? It's fairly obvious to most of you, I would have thought. The two larger dark circles are the industrial areas of Tarrant Point and Kirrawee. The red circles are the commercial centres, and they're along the railway line journey from Cronulla to Sutherland and down to Engadine. There are some other smaller employment nodes like Ansdale and Heathcote, but generally it's as you would expect it to be. The two industrial areas and then the centres that run along the railway lines where the jobs typically are. In terms of where the jobs are, in terms of industry sector, that gives you the top 10 in terms of which sector the jobs are in. The top 3 categories, healthcare, social assistance, construction and retail, they total up to 50% of all jobs in the Shire. So those 3 are by far the biggest sectors in terms of employment in the Shire. Health, construction and education, which education is the 4th one, are all growing. That's the trend for those over recent times. Probably not surprising for you. Manufacture and wholesale have declined and look to continue to be on the decline. That decline has been about 30% in the period from 2011 to 2016. So in a 5-year period, the jobs in those 2 sectors declined by about 30%. A little bit more about jobs. 70% of jobs in the Shire are filled by local residents. So there's a very high proportion of live work in the Shire. That's reflected in the council as well. Our workforce is about 70% Shire residents as well. And that seems to be typical across most sectors. Our employment self-containment rate is 41%, so there are still a fairly large number of people leaving the Shire to work every day. We don't have enough jobs locally. A lot of the local jobs are filled by local people, but there's not enough of them. And so 60% of the workforce leaves the Shire every day to go to work. And that has a number of other consequences in terms of impact on people personally, but also it means more cars on the road, more people on the trains, because they've all got to get their way out of the Shire to go to work. So more local employment solves a number of problems. It's good for economic activity in the Shire, it's good for people's work-life balance, and it also will help solve our transport and traffic problems if people don't have to travel so far. So the biggest destination for workers outside of the Shire is the Sydney CBD, probably no surprise there. The airport is becoming an increasingly important work destination for Shire residents. There seems to be a couple of reasons for that. One is the skill set of people who live here. There seems to be people that choose to live in the Shire who have the skills that are required in airport-related employment. And I think the other is just proximity. So it's still, in terms of the commute, it's not a bad commute to get from the Shire to the airport compared to other parts of Sydney. We have seen, you've probably noticed as well, some more airport-related uses moving down into the Shire as well, particularly to Town Point. There's pressure on the land around the airport for residential redevelopment and high-order commercial uses. And so you have things like a motorhome company opened up down in Town Point, and they're primarily people coming from the airport to pick up their motorhome. They probably used to be in Mascot somewhere closer by, but can't afford to be there anymore. So we're seeing a bit of a migration of those sort of uses into Town Point in particular. The Shire is very heavily car dependent. Again, no news to you guys, I wouldn't think. Most people travel around by car. Our car ownership rates down here are some of the highest in Sydney, and they're growing. So the proportion of homes that have multiple vehicles is a lot higher here than other areas of Sydney. Okay, going to move now to look at the priorities in the district plan around jobs. So I mentioned that there was a number of priorities that sat underneath those 4 themes that we have to address. So I'm going to take you through the ones that roll out of the South District Plan in terms of the productivity theme. Unemployment is pretty low in the Shire. Nice number there. Okay, so the first priority in the district plan is to support the growth of ANSTO and the innovation precinct in particular. Have many of you heard about that initiative with ANSTO? Are you familiar with that? Yep. Okay. Essentially, it's ANSTO exploiting what it has to offer in terms of science and technology. It's been a fairly inward-focused organisation for many years, and now they're really opening themselves up and saying, we've got some good equipment here, we've got clever people here, why don't we make the most of it for the Australian economy? So out of that came the idea of the Innovation Campus, where they'll have more students coming in to work with them. Those students will come up with great ideas, which they'll foster through an incubator out there, which has started up in the last 6 months or so. And then they're having to have a business park out there ultimately where those good ideas can be commercialised and turned into jobs. So it's kind of a 3-step process that's really gathering some momentum now. So there's about 1,200 staff on the site at the moment, and then a whole bunch of other businesses that are located out there as well. The Innovation Precinct Initiative has started. So the incubator is called Nanjin, and it's operating in a small building out there, but they've already had to expand that. I think there's something like 6 or 7 local businesses now working in that incubator. Potential for at least 5,000 jobs. I think there's probably potential ultimately for more like 10,000 jobs out there. There is a similar facility in France, built around a research reactor, and it has gone absolutely gangbusters. There's now universities and a whole town formed around that precinct now, and I think ANSTO has the same potential in the sort of medium to long term. The one good thing that they do have out there is plenty of land. So often these projects are stifled because there's nowhere to expand into, or land is very expensive to acquire, but Ansto actually own a lot of land out there, which will help them along the way. One of the problems they have though is a lack of connectivity. So the reactor was built out there in the 50s to be purposely to be away from everything because everyone was scared of nuclear stuff, which now means that they've got plenty of space around them, but they're out in the middle of nowhere. So in terms of getting people out there to work and getting freight to and from, that's a bit of a challenge that needs to be solved. And there's a solution on the way, I think. So one of the themes in the district plan you might remember was infrastructure and collaboration. So what the Greater Sydney Commission have done is identified a number of what they call collaboration areas, and Ansto is one of them. And what they do is they kind of lead a 12-month process of trying to get all the stakeholders together to try and come up with a strategy to make these things fire. And so the Ansto collaboration is about halfway through that process now. And there was a meeting actually just this week on looking at infrastructure, bushfire, and a few other things with the relevant agencies to try and figure out solutions to some of those problems. They need access to the airport to fly particular flight products out, and the new airport will be about the same distance from Ansto, so there's potential for connections to the west as well out of that project. So this has been talked about for a while, but through I'm involved with the steering committee on this one, and it's actually happening. So it's not an idea anymore. There's money being allocated towards it. They've actually changed the common legislation to allow this to be part of Ansto's remit. The state government's granted some money towards it. The incubator is actually happening. They've got, I think, close to 50 universities signed on to work with them for postgrad programs. So this, my feeling of this is it's a real thing, and I think they've been pushing a lot up the hill, and it's just about to go to the edge. So it's exciting stuff. And the jobs that will come out of this will be broad ranging from nuclear physicists, down to courier drivers, financial services, catering. The whole range of things will be in there in terms of supporting the businesses that turn up at Ansto. So high skilled jobs as well, which we lack in the Shire, overrepresented in retail at the moment. So to have something like that in the Shire would be a great thing for diversity as well. The second planning priority in the South District Plan is to support the growth of the Caringbah Medical Precinct. This is the area, I don't think I've got a map here. This is the area between Sutherland Hospital and Caringbah Centre. I do have a map, which I'll come to in a second. So as you saw before, healthcare and social assistance is one of the biggest sectors for jobs in the Shire. So it's an area that we think that we can build on and sort of capitalise on what we already have. So the aim is to provide a cluster between Sutherland and Caringbah. At the moment, medical is dispersed a bit. There's a fair bit in Miranda, there's some in Caringbah. So we're looking to really kind of cluster some of those things together and try and lever off the momentum that could come from that. I'll just skip ahead to that plan to show you where it is. Somebody pointed out to me that it's a rather unfortunate shape, that piece, but anyway. So here's the hospital. This is Caringbah train station down here. So the area marked in red is the area that's been zoned for the medical precinct. So basically trying to create a connection between the two. And so what we've done in that area is the planning controls there allow residential at a very low scale, really not worth building. But if you have 25% medical floor space in your building, you can go up to 6 stories with a high floor space ratio. So what we're really saying is we're mandating 25% medical floor space in all of the buildings in that precinct. So that means for all of them, it's either 1 or 2 levels of medical floor space, and then 4 stories of apartments above. It was experimental. We sometimes try these things, not really sure if they're going to work out. In the current building cycle, development cycle, there's been a lot happening in the Shire, as you'll see on some slides coming up. We weren't sure whether this area effectively being sort of handicapped in a way by having to have the medical with the residential, whether that would be attractive to the industry or not. residential is easy, you just build it, sell it and move on. The medical floor space in here was a bit of an unknown as to whether people would want to move into it or invest in it. But if you've driven past there recently, you'll see there's 4 or 5 buildings under construction. There's a couple that are almost finished. And we're still having conversations with a number of people, including some big healthcare providers who want, some of them want 100% medical buildings in that precinct. So it's looking promising. I guess we really won't know until people start moving in there to see whether it is a viable thing economically. But so far so good. So we're hoping that this will work out, and we'll look at potentially other lands around that area to add to the precinct if the demand's there for it. So as I said, there's effectively a bonus in place for health services facilities. So the potential in that area is 26,000 odd square metres. We've approved about 10,000, so getting up towards half of the sites have an approval or proposed, and we've actually given approval to about 7,000, and 3 or 4 of those are close to completion now. So we'll see how that one works out. Okay, priority 3 under the district plan for productivity is around Sutherland, Kirrawee, Miranda. So Sutherland and Miranda have been identified as a strategic centre, or both of them are strategic centres. So what that means is that they're identified as centres that have good accessibility and where the district plan identifies potential for jobs growth in particular. You might have heard of the 30-minute city concept. It pops up in the media every now and then. That's really around people being able to get to a job from where they live, to school, to recreation opportunities, all those kinds to shop within 30 minutes. So not having to drive across the city to find a particular thing that you might want to do, or a place you might want to work, but having all of that stuff more local, which comes back to that issue of having more local jobs means less pressure on the transport and road system. So the 30-minute city is all around that kind of an idea. So Sutherland and Miranda have really been identified for that reason. They're pretty central in the Shire. They're both on railway lines. They're both on main roads. And so that's where the focus has been put in the district plan for Sutherland Shire. So for Sutherland, there's been a national target set of 5,700 jobs now, 8,000 to 9,000 jobs in 20 years' time. There's nothing in the plan that really says how that's going to happen. And Sutherland has been, a big country town for a long time now. So we're giving a lot of thought to how we might make that happen in the local planning controls. One thing that we've got a consultant working on now is looking at why we're not getting a lot of development in the actual centres in Sutherland Shire, and it's a bit of a city-wide problem. Most of what you can see at the moment that's happening in the Shire, where all the cranes are, is around the edges. It's easier. You can buy old houses or old flat buildings and knock them down and build residential. In Sutherland, for example, there's height limits in there up to sort of 40 metres. So you're talking 12, 13 stories, and absolutely nothing's happened in the current cycle. We've got one application at the moment on Royal Street, but nothing actually built in the centre, but plenty going on around the outside of it. And so we're trying to understand why that is. Got a few ideas, but we've engaged somebody to have a really close look at that and do some work with some of the stakeholders, business owners, property owners, and look at the planning controls and do some modelling for us to try and understand what we can do to unlock the potential in areas like Sutherland and Miranda and Kirrawee, to get those centres a bit more dynamic and to get those jobs into those centres. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that exercise. So Sutherland has the entertainment centre, which council's committed recently to doing a major refurbishment of. So we'll have a stronger focus on entertainment in the future. You've got the court and a major police station there in the council building, so it has a little bit of a focus and momentum around those things. We have a few local law firms and that sort of thing in Sutherland that are there because of the court, so there's potential for some of those type of activities to grow in Sutherland. We're really considering Sutherland and Kirrawee to be one centre in a way. It is less than a kilometre's walk between the two. And with the South Village development there, Kirrawee really has taken on a lot of the retail focus in that area. Sutherland has 2 small supermarkets. Kirrawee will have 2 full-line supermarkets and Aldi as well soon. The connection between the two is fairly level in terms of walking it. When the F6 is built, then that connection between the two will be a lot easier when Acacia Road is hopefully a quieter road and most of the traffic's going down the freeway. So we're really looking at the 2 of those centres together and trying to figure out how we can tie them together and get them to work as one. As I said, there's been some incentives in those centres that they haven't really worked. So this essentially shows you land that really hasn't been developed to its potential, which is in the blue, and you can see that's really the whole centre. Most of the development has happened in the red areas in between, which are residential areas, and that's where the building is taking place at the moment. So Miranda, jobs growth target there as well. We're expecting that to more likely to be around retail and leisure. You've got Westfield there as a big magnet. Likely to be a continuation of those sorts of jobs in that area. The F6 and the visionary mass trains are linked to Cogra, wherever it's going to go. As I said, we don't really have any detail on that. It would be nice to know if there's going to be where that might land in Miranda. If there's going to be a new station or whether it connects up with the existing rail station, at least we could start to plan or even reserve some land around that area. Thank you. Give me a cold. So we could start to put land in a holding pattern around where those new stations might be, for example. We don't have that level of information at the moment, so this round of planning at least won't really be factoring that in to any sort of concrete extent. Same problem with Miranda, really. There's not really been a lot of development in the centre. There's been a few on the Kingsway, but not a lot. So the work we're doing will help us understand why that's the case as well. So there's Miranda, a big grey blob in the middle is Westfield. The blue shows you where there's still sites that have potential left to be developed in the centre. And those could be mixed residential, retail, commercial developments with health services or more retail in them. The area up here in University Road and Pinnacle Street has recently been developed for residential, and there's also quite a bit happening down here. In the dip at the other end of Miranda. But again, it's residential and it's on the edges. There's not much happening in the middle. Priority 4. So this is around our existing industrial land. So we have 600 hectares of industrial zone land in the Shire. 21% of our jobs are there, so it's certainly an important asset for us. 45% of the jobs there are population serving. That means they're people who repair cars, build your kitchen, do stuff for the local population, so they're not international businesses or manufacturing and exporting. They're jobs that serve the local community essentially. So it's an important asset for us from that point of view. The state government has done some work to set some benchmarks for how much land you need to serve a population. The land that we have in the Shire is less than the benchmark that they have. So what that's telling us is that that land is important and sort of fairly precious in a way, and we really can't afford to erode that into uses like residential, because we really do need it for local jobs and to serve the local population. We do have some land zone working waterfront, down in Mangrove Lane in Tarrant Point. That land is also becoming more and more important as other areas in Sydney where those kind of uses are, like boat building, boat repairs, marine road uses are being squeezed out. Most of the ones on the harbour have gone or are going because the land's valuable and there's residential nearby. So the small land that we have there is actually 20% of that type of zone land in all of Sydney. We have new owners of that land, or the ownership changed a couple of years ago, and they both have fairly definite plans for those sites down there that will create quite a few jobs. And already we've got ferries coming from Sydney Harbour overnight to be serviced down in Tarrant Point, which used to go elsewhere on the harbour to be repaired. So there's a whole lot of that industry coming our way, and I think that's something that we can look to in the future to expand on. As mentioned before, the airport is having influence in terms of where the jobs are coming from. Toyota, still really no clarity on what's happening with the Toyota site down in Caringbah. We know they're moving. We know their plans have taken a little longer than they expected, but we don't know exactly when. We're not really clear on what their expectations or ideas are. But there's a great opportunity there for the Shire, I think. The council, and as far as we can see, the state government are both pretty focused on that being some sort of employment generating opportunity. I think residential there would be a shame, and we don't really need it, to be honest. We can zone land elsewhere for residential and the apartment buildings pop up, so we don't really need to squander that opportunity, I don't think, for residential. So watch this space on that one. The council's certainly interested in that and trying to keep itself informed of what's going on there so that we can try and influence that to get the best outcome. It could be education, it could be a university or something like that. It could be some sort of high tech industry. There's a whole lot of opportunities down there, and it's a big site as well. Kurnell, there's still a fair bit of land zone industrial at Kurnell. It obviously has its constraints in terms of access and proximity, but nonetheless, opportunity there for something. We have recently there's been approvals for Dicker Data to expand down there, so that's a huge facility. Tyres has also got approval for a large distribution and office facility down there as well, so there's something happening in Kurnell. The other thing is we need to accommodate the emerging economy, and the planning system has been traditionally a bit slow at responding as industry and commerce changes. Zoning and that sort of thing tends to lag behind a little bit. Bulky goods back in the late 80s, early 90s was an example of that, where the sort of homemaker centre became a phenomenon that didn't really fit in the planning system. So part of the district plan priority is to be mindful of what's coming next. Industry's changing, and the planning system needs to be flexible enough to accommodate that into the future. But essentially the approach for industrial land at least is really a retain and protect. So the state government's telling us we don't really have enough of it. It's important to our economy, and so we need to have some flexibility with it to accommodate things that are coming in the future, but not turn it over to other things. Okay, the last one is support the tourism industry. As you know, lots of great potential in the Shire for that, lots of great natural attractions. Visitation is growing slowly, 5% year on year. It's a business that has potential to contribute a lot to the local economy. It already is, but there's a lot more potential there. 76% of people that visit the Shire as a tourist only come here for the day. And the research says that if you get them to stay overnight, even just one night, the amount of money they bring to the local economy is significantly higher. So we've got a challenge there in converting day trippers into people that stay for a period of time. And to do that, we need short stay accommodation. And that's been a difficult nut to crack in the Shire. People have recognised that need for a long time, but yet nobody's been prepared to build it here. So there's a few possibilities on the horizon at the moment that people that are interested in that area. But the challenge is that it's the sites where you can build short stay accommodation are sites where you can generally build residential apartments as well, and the residential generally outbids short stay accommodation because it's just easier and quicker and more guaranteed. So there's more risk associated with building short stay accommodation, and so I think council really has come to the understanding that to get that, they might need to give a little bit more. Otherwise, it will continue to be outbid by other uses that are a lower risk for investors. But watch this space. I think we might see something on that front fairly soon. So with more accommodation and more tourism comes the scope for more cultural and sporting events. Already there's quite a few events that could be held at Cronulla, and people approach or come looking in the area who are organising those events, and when they see that there's no accommodation here and there's other infrastructure that we don't have, they'll find somewhere else to go. So if a few of these things come together, there's a whole lot of potential that can be unlocked in the tourism industry as well. Okay, moving on to housing. So historically, our housing growth rate in the Shire has been around about 400 dwellings per year, which is not very many. We have in the order of 80,000 dwellings in the Shire, so proportionally to very small growth rate. As I mentioned, household size is declining, so we need more dwellings for the same population. So that 400 new dwellings per year that we've had for a long period of time hasn't really resulted in much population growth. Some of that's just been to accommodate the existing population. So in 2015, the council put in place a new local environmental plan. That's the kind of third plan down that list, which is the space the council kind of gets to play in. And that has really triggered what you can see happening around the Shire at the moment. And that there was a fair bit of pent-up demand, and so that capacity in that plan was taken up fairly rapidly. Interestingly, 21% of all the new dwellings in the last 10 years in the Shire have been granny flats. They're a bit of a silent kind of housing form that people don't really pick up on, but we've actually got lots of them in the Shire, and it is an interesting form of housing that fills a niche in the market that people don't really think a lot about, but they're very popular. As mentioned before, increase in the older groups in the population, which has an impact on the type of housing that we need as well. And housing choice, really for people that are moving out of traditional family homes that might be older, they need to have something that suits their lifestyle. Housing affordability has been a challenge in the Shire, and particularly for key workers, so people working in hospitals and that sort of thing, find it difficult to be able to afford to buy or rent in the Shire, and that's a challenge that we really haven't tackled particularly, but something we need to be mindful of going forward. Okay, so here's a picture of what's happened over the last few years. So we have the years along the bottom, and the number of dwellings approved on the left here. So you can see that we're bouncing along here, 300, 400, 500 per year. And then 2015, the EP comes in, and my assessment team at council became very busy very quickly. So the blue is the total approvals, and the red is the actual completions. So there's obviously always a lag between the two. Things get approved and take a while to get built. So we're now around here, and the boom is kind of starting to subside, as it is across all of Sydney. The number of applications coming in, particularly for multi-unit residential, is dropping. But there's still a bit of a spike in construction in this period for people that had committed to projects that have to see them through now. So again, we're kind of at this point here, but expecting over the next few years that the construction commencements will drop off and the activity in that area will settle back down. So we're saying that around about 700 dwellings per year is what we need going forward to accommodate our natural population growth. So in terms of housing supply, the Greater Sydney Commission set us a 5-year target of 5,200 dwellings to be completed. On the right there you can see how we're tracking against that. So at the end of 2018 there have been 1,700 completed, 2,788 under construction, and we've approved another 3,000 or so, some of which will start in this cycle and some of which won't. So I would expect to see all of those completed by the end of that 5-year period, but I think we'll meet and probably slightly exceed our 5,200 target in that time frame. So in terms of where the housing's gone, I know this is a bit hard to see at that scale for you. The dots on here represent where development's taken place over the last few years. The different colours are different types. So blue are residential apartments. The big circle here is South Village. The two circles over there are all the way up the Sharks development. The one with the black ring around is completed. The other one is under consideration now. You can see even in Engadine there's been a bit of a spike. There's a couple of largish flat buildings in Engadine under construction. The red dots are townhouses, medium density development, and the yellow are dual occupancies and lower density types. So you can see from that two things. The distribution of it is fairly wide, so there's obviously some concentration around the centres, so either in Miranda and around Sutherland, as mentioned. There's a couple of the really big ones as well. The green circle up there is Green Hills Beach, where a few hundred residential lots were developed in that time period. But other than that, the townhouses and the dual occupancies are spread. There's some concentration of them. Dual occupancies in Caringbah South have been very popular, and also in Sylvania. But generally speaking, a fairly good distribution around the place. And that's good for people in terms of having choice. So if you live in, an older house that you find it hard to maintain in one of the more dispersed suburbs and you want to move out of it into something more manageable, there's things going on nearby. You don't have to move to another suburb or into a centre, into an apartment to find that. There's dual occupancies and other things going on around the place that might be suitable for people to move into. So distribution is good. The other thing is that the variety is also pretty good. So in some areas of Sydney, your choice is to live in a house or live in an apartment, and that's basically it. What we've seen is a good distribution between apartments, townhouses, and dual occupancies, granny flats. So people are, the degree of choice down here has been pretty good. So going forward, this is the forecast for us. Pretty modest population growth, which is the bars, and the horizontal line there is dwelling growth, both moving along proportionally, so no big no spikes, no big immigration, just natural population growth and really natural housing growth to follow along behind that. So in that 20-year period, population increase of about 30,000 and about 15,000 more dwellings. So nothing too dramatic. Certainly nothing like some other parts of Sydney where they're getting new through the Bankstown area where the new metro's going in. There's tens of thousands of new dwellings planned along those corridors. But going back to where I started, no new infrastructure, no great pressure to provide huge amounts of housing in the Shire, which makes good planning sense, really. Okay, so going forward from here in terms of housing, there is still some capacity left in our LEP. So all of what was zoned back in 2015 hasn't been taken up. A lot of it has, but there's still a reasonable amount of capacity in there. So we don't really have to reinvent the wheel in that regard. Our community has told us that they prefer centralised development, so they prefer the high density stuff to be in the centres, or around the centres, rather than in the suburbs. So that's an approach that we'll continue to adopt. So allowing some stuff, dual and that sort of stuff in the suburbs, but concentrating the bigger stuff around the established centres. As I mentioned, Sutherland and Kirrawee and Miranda are identified in the district plan as being strategic centres, so it makes sense to put housing around them to support them. So that'll be another principle that we'll follow through looking at housing. So housing and the jobs side of things come together there. So this research that we're having done on why the centres aren't developing will be important because the community has a preference for development in the centres, and so we need to work out what we can do to unlock that potential for jobs and housing. Some decentralised development to give housing choice. So as I said, it's good to be able to stay in your own neighbourhood if you need to move into a different form of housing, so we'll continue with a smattering of different types of housing through the suburbs as well. Okay, back to where we started. And yep, this is my last slide. So back to that diagram. So hopefully now, it's had a little bit of time to percolate in. Regional metropolitan plan, highest level, 40-year vision, 20-year plan. District plan, which runs as the South District plan. And that's a 20-year plan that sets out the themes as well as the planning priorities for us to address. And then down to the local level, our local environmental plan and our local strategic planning statement. So the intention here is that this statement will capture all of the stuff that's up in here, and it will also bring in the stuff from our local community plan, and it will set a 20-year vision and a 10-year plan for the Shire. So that's going to be quite an important document. That's a new requirement that was legislated through the GSC's activities, so we haven't had to do that before. We're working on ours now. The council has adopted a draft version of it to be refined and worked up for public consultation, and that will happen in the next few months. So there's a great opportunity there to get involved in that, and quite a bit of the information that I've shown you today will be in there in terms of what the priorities are and the strategies are for us going forward around housing and jobs. The council has actually met on Monday night with some of the staff to start looking at how we might engage on this strategy, and one of the ways will be focus groups. And Councillor Simpson was just saying that will be a good opportunity for groups like yours to get involved in that and help shape the way that strategy rolls out. So once those strategies are done, they've got to be executed, adopted by council, and then signed off by the state government. They then really become the sieve or the filter for what happens in the next 10 years at least in the Shire. So if someone comes along with an idea that's not consistent with that plan, it probably won't get up. So the idea is to really sort of map out a vision for things under the 4 themes over here. So we talked about productivity and livability really today, but to have a strategy that covers all of those things and then measure what comes in the future by what's in that strategy. So it's an important one to get right, an important one to have a say in. So one of the things that will drop out of that strategy once it's done is a refresher of our local environmental plan, and that's essentially where the land is zoned and planning controls are put in place. Early next year we'll work on another housing strategy, and that will fall out of what's in the local strategic planning statement and some of the data that I've shown you this morning in terms of what we're expecting in terms of demand. And through next year we'll probably have a very fresh submission, a refresh of our local environmental plan, and that'll include some rezonings around centres most likely, and some tweaking of other controls to build in a little bit more capacity in the plan for the next 10 years. So that'll be next year. That's the end of my presentation. I hope that all made some sense to you in the end in terms of how it all hangs together for the state government, and I'm happy to take your questions now, Joe.